The stars don't twinkle out here. They stare. They are cold, unblinking eyes of ancient gods who couldn't care less if you live or die. My name is Julian Vane, and I'm a scrapper. A polite term for a grave robber who travels the dark patches of the Proxima sector looking for decommissioned hulls and forgotten tech. But today, I wasn't looking for scrap. I was looking for a ghost. The signal was a low-frequency pulse, rhythmic and desperate, like a heartbeat hitting a brick wall. Shouldn't have been there. The sector was supposed to be a dead zone, a graveyard of failed terraforming projects. But the NAV computer on my ship, the rusted Talon, kept locking onto a coordinate that didn't exist on any modern map. Aegis 7. Julian, you're chasing a glitch. My partner, Kale, muttered over the comms. He was in the engine room, probably trying to keep the life support from wheezing its last breath. Glitches don't send SOS signals in encrypted 20th century Morse. Kale, I replied, my eyes glued to the sensor array. Aegis 7 was the jewel of the Reach 40 years ago. Then the corporation blacked it out. No records, no survivors. Just gone. Exactly, gone. As in, let's stay away from the black hole of lawsuits and biohazards, Kale grumbled. But I couldn't turn away. The signal felt personal. It felt like a tether pulling me into the mouth of a beast. As we cleared the nebula, the planet loomed. It was a bruised purple sphere, choked by a thick, artificial atmosphere that shouldn't still be functioning. In the center of the dark side, a single light flickered. A beacon. The descent was a violent dance with gravity. The Talon groaned, its heat shield screaming as we pierced the toxic clouds. When we finally leveled out, the sight made my blood run cold. Aegis 7 wasn't a ruin. It was a fortress. Massive silver domes connected by translucent tubes stretched across a valley of obsidian rock. And they were glowing. They have power, I whispered. Kale, they have full grid power. How is that possible after 4 decades? There was no answer, only the static of the storm outside. We landed on a derelict pad, the landing gear sinking into a layer of ash that looked suspiciously like bone dust. I suited up, the hiss of my oxygen tank the only comfort in the suffocating silence. As I stepped onto the ramp, the air outside was thick, smelling of ozone and rotted honey. The main airlock of the central dome opened before I even touched the panel. It was an invitation. Kale, stay with the ship. If I don't check in every 10 minutes, burn the engines and leave. Don't look back. Julian, wait. I cut the comms. I needed to focus. The interior of the colony was a cathedral of high-tech decay. Moving walkways stood frozen like dead snakes. Holographic advertisements for a better life flickered with distorted faces, their smiles stretching into grotesque masks. I followed the signal toward the core sector. The silence was heavy, the kind that makes your ears ring. I passed a cafeteria. The tables were set. Half-eaten meals sat petrified in the recycled air. It looked like the inhabitants had simply stood up and walked away in the middle of dinner, or were pulled away. In the center of the hall, I saw the first sign of life, or what passed for it. A woman stood with her back to me. She was wearing a tattered lab coat, her hair a matted silver nest. She was swaying, her fingers tracing the patterns on a wall panel. "Hello," I called out, my hand hovering over my pulse cutter. "I'm Julian." I responded to the signal. She didn't turn. Her voice was a dry rasp, like sandpaper on stone. "The many are hungry, Julian, but the one is full. I don't understand. Are there others? We have a ship. We can get you out." She turned then, and I nearly dropped my light. Her eyes weren't eyes anymore. They were milky white orbs, overgrown with a fine, translucent fungus that seemed to pulse in time with the station's lights. "You didn't come to rescue us?" She smiled, showing teeth that had been filed into sharp points. "You came to feed the cycle. The forgotten don't want to be found. They want to be replaced." Suddenly, the floor beneath me buckled. A vent hissed, and a cloud of pale spores filled the air. I lunged back, but my boots slipped on something slick, a trail of translucent slime leading into the darkness of the lower levels. The woman began to laugh, a high, rhythmic sound that matched the Morse code of the SOS. I turned to run, but the airlock had vanished. In its place was a wall of living tissue, a pulsating mass of gray muscle that had grown over the metal in seconds. I was inside the beast now, and the digestion was about to begin. I scrambled into a side corridor, my heart hammering against my ribs. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing walls that were no longer steel. They were coated in a thick, leathery membrane that throbbed with a dull, subterranean heat. "Kale, do you copy?" "Kale." Nothing. The rusted talon was gone, or at least my connection to it was. I was alone in a labyrinth of meat and machinery. As I moved deeper, I started seeing the faces. Not real faces, but shapes pushed through the leathery walls. Human silhouettes, frozen in expressions of silent agony. They weren't just trapped. They were being integrated. The colony wasn't abandoned. It was evolving. I reached the medical bay, hoping to find a map or a way to vent the atmosphere. Instead, I found the archive. Rows of glass jars lined the shelves, but they didn't contain samples. They contained memories. Glowing blue filaments swirled in the liquid. I touched one, and a vision slammed into my brain. I saw a man, Dr. Eris Thorne, the head of the colony. I saw him staring at a rift in the obsidian rock. Something had come out, a sentient mycelium, a cosmic fungus that didn't eat flesh. It ate consciousness. It offered a deal. Immortality in exchange for individuality. One mind, one hunger. The jewel of the Reach hadn't failed. It had succeeded too well. I pulled my hand away, gasping. My skin was itching. I looked down and saw a faint, white dusting on my sleeve. The spores. They were already in my suit. They were waiting for me to breathe. A sound echoed from the dark. The wet, heavy slap of something large moving on the ceiling. I looked up. It wasn't a monster. It was a cluster of bodies, woven together by the white fungus, their limbs moving in a sickening, coordinated crawl. "Welcome home, Julian." The voices whispered in unison, a thousand-tone choir of the damned. "The many are waiting." I fired my pulse cutter, the blue beam carving a path through the hanging meat. I ran not toward the exit, but toward the core. If I was going to die, I was going to take this hive mind with me. The deeper I descended into Aegis 7, the less the colony resembled a human structure. The geometry was wrong. Corridors bent at angles that made my vision swim, and the floor felt soft, like walking on a giant tongue. The medical bay had transitioned into something the survivors called the nursery. I stepped into a vast chamber where the silver domes met the bedrock. Hundreds of translucent pods hung from the ceiling like overripe fruit. Inside each one was a human, or what was left of one. Their skin had turned the color of moonlight, and their nervous systems were pulled out of their bodies, trailing like glowing vines into the central pillar of the room. "They aren't dead." A voice spoke from the shadows. I spun around, my pulse cutter shaking. Standing near a console of bone and glass was a man. He looked remarkably normal compared to the woman I'd seen earlier, except for the fact that his shadow didn't match his movements. It lurched and twitched on its own. "I'm Marcus," he said, his voice strangely calm. "I was the chief engineer here, 42 years ago, I think. Time is different when you're part of the weave." "Marcus, we have to get out of here," I said, trying to sound authoritative despite the terror. "I have a ship. We can blow this place and get you to a med station." Marcus laughed, a hollow sound that ended in a wet cough. "You think I'm a prisoner? Julian, I'm the architect. I built the bridges between our brains and the mycelium. We were tired of the war, the hunger, the loneliness of the void. Here, no one is ever alone. We share every thought, every dream, every shiver of pleasure. And every scream?" I pointed to the pods. "Look at them. They're being digested. Evolution is painful, boy." Marcus stepped into the light. His chest was translucent. I could see his heart, but it wasn't beating. Instead, a cluster of white threads was pumping his blood. The corporation didn't abandon us. They were afraid of us. They saw a species that could survive the vacuum of space without suits. A species that didn't need food, only connection. They tried to burn us out, but the mycelium is deeper than the crust of this planet. I looked at the console. It was the source of the SOS. You sent the signal? Why? To lure more victims. Marcus's expression shifted. For a moment, his eyes cleared, and I saw a flicker of the man he used to be. A flash of pure, unadulterated horror. I didn't send it, he whispered, leaning in. The mycelium did. It's hitting a limit. It's overpopulated. The collective consciousness is becoming a cacophony. It's going mad, Julian. It needs a hard drive, a fresh, uninfected brain to act as a central processor to stabilize the network. It chose you. The itching on my skin intensified. I ripped off my glove and saw fine white filaments beginning to sprout from my pores. I was already being claimed. How do I stop it? I hissed, the panic finally breaking through. You can't, Marcus said, his shadow suddenly lunging forward and wrapping around my feet like a physical weight. But you can choose how you join. You can be the king of this nightmare, or you can be the carpet. I kicked out, the pulse cutter flaring. The shadow retreated, shrieking in a frequency that shattered the glass jars on the shelves. Memories spilled across the floor, blue sparks of life flickering out in the rot. I ran past Marcus, toward the central pillar. It was a massive column of pulsating brain matter and fiber optic cables, the literal heart of the colony. If I could overload the thermal regulators, I could turn this entire dome into a furnace. But the mycelium knew. The floor beneath me rose up, forming a wave of flesh that threw me against the pillar. The surface was warm and sticky. Thousands of tiny mouths opened on the pillar's surface, whispering my name. Julian, Julian, give us your silence. Give us your peace. I felt a sharp prick in the back of my neck. A vine had found the gap in my suit. Suddenly, I wasn't in the room anymore. I was standing in a field of wheat under a golden sun. I was 6 years old. My mother was there, her face blurred but her scent, lavender and old books, was overwhelming. It's okay, Julian, she said. The storm is over. Just lay down. I felt a wave of bliss so intense it threatened to stop my heart. The pain in my ribs, the fear of the dark, the years of scavenging in the cold. It all started to melt away. This was the peace Marcus talked about. No, I bit my tongue until the metallic taste of blood snapped me back. The golden field flickered. I saw the reality for a split second. I was being pulled into the pillar, my suit being peeled away by thousands of tiny, translucent hands. Get out of my head, I screamed. I jammed the pulse cutter directly into the pillar and set it to continuous discharge. The reaction was instantaneous. A scream erupted from the very walls of the colony. A collective howl of 1,000 souls being burned. The pillar spasmed, ejecting me. I hit the floor hard, my vision blurring. Smoke filled the chamber. The sweet smell of rotted honey turned into the stench of burning hair. I scrambled toward the access tunnel, my lungs burning. I could hear Kale's voice in my head. Not a telepathic ghost, but a real, crackling radio transmission. Julian, the planet it's moving. The sensors are going haywire. I'm bringing the talon in, but the ground is opening up. Get out of there. I reached the elevator shaft. The lift was gone, but the maintenance ladder remained. I climbed, my muscles screaming, the white filaments on my arms turning black and shriveling as the temperature in the dome spiked. As I reached the upper level, I looked back down. Marcus was standing in the center of the fire. He wasn't running. He was stretching his arms out, a smile of genuine relief on his face as the flames consumed his translucent body. Thank you, he mouthed. I didn't stop. I burst through the inner airlock, the living wall now charred and brittle. I ran across the landing pad, the ash blowing in a gale-force wind. The rusted talon was hovering 10 feet off the ground, its engines throwing blue fire into the purple sky. Jump! Kale yelled over the roar. I lunged, my fingers catching the edge of the ramp. Kale pulled me in, and the talon banked hard, pulling away from Aegis 7. As we cleared the atmosphere, I looked out the viewport. The colony wasn't exploding. It was folding. The domes were sinking into the obsidian rock, the entire valley collapsing into a massive, yawning crater. "We made it," Kale panted, collapsing into his seat. "We actually made it." "What the hell was that place, Julian?" I looked at my arms. The black shriveled threads were falling off, leaving behind small, red scars. "A mistake, Kale. A mistake that forgot how to die." I leaned back, closing my eyes. The silence of the ship was beautiful. For the first time in hours, I was alone in my own head. But as the Talon jumped to warp, a small, rhythmic thumping started in the back of my mind. Dot dot dot, dash dash dash, dot dot dot, the SOS. It wasn't coming from the planet anymore. It was coming from inside me. Days passed. We were back in the safe sector, drifting toward a trading hub where we could sell the meager scrap we'd managed to grab before the madness started. Kale was ecstatic. He thought the scars on my arms were just chemical burns. He thought I was just shaken up. But I knew better. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the golden wheat field. Only now, the sun was a giant, unblinking white eye, and the wheat was made of human fingers. My mother's face was no longer blurred. She had the milky eyes of the woman in the colony. "You brought us with you, Julian," she would whisper. "The many don't need a dome. We only need a vessel." I spent hours in the ship's tiny medbay, running scans on myself. The results always came back clean. No fungal infections, no foreign DNA. My blood was mine. My heart was mine. Then why did I feel like a stranger in my own skin? One night, while Kale was asleep, I sat in the cockpit, watching the stars. I reached for a ration pack, but my hand stopped halfway. It wasn't that I changed my mind. My hand simply refused to move, stayed frozen in the air, trembling slightly. I tried to pull it back, but my arm felt like it was made of lead. "Julian!" I jumped. Kale was standing in the doorway, his face pale in the dim light of the consoles. "You've been sitting like that for 20 minutes, he said, his voice trembling. "I've been calling your name from the galley. You didn't even blink." I was just thinking, Kale. I'm tired." "No." Kale stepped forward, holding up a tablet. "I did a deep scan of the ship's logs while you were in the medbay. Not your medical logs, the audio logs. Do you know what the Talon has been recording for the last 72 hours? He hit play. A sound filled the cockpit. It was my voice, but not my voice. It was a rhythmic, guttural clicking. I was speaking in my sleep, but I wasn't using words. I was clicking in Morse code. "You're talking to something, Julian," Kale whispered. "Or something is talking through you. We're not going to the hub. I've set a course for the nearest military quarantine station. They have specialists." "No!" I shouted. As the word left my mouth, a surge of white-hot energy erupted from my spine. My vision turned purple. I felt the mycelium, the real mycelium, the part that had hidden in my bone marrow, beneath the reach of the scanners, suddenly bloom. I didn't hit Kale. My body moved with a fluid, terrifying grace that I didn't command. I pinned him to the bulkhead, my fingers pressing into the soft tissue of his throat. "Julian, stop. It's me," Kale gasped, his eyes bulging. "Julian isn't here right now," a voice said. It came from my throat, but it was the thousand-tone choir. "We are stabilizing. The fresh drive is nearly formatted." I was a spectator in my own skull. I watched as my hand reached for a pulse cutter. I screamed internally, fighting for every inch of my nervous system. I managed to jerk my arm to the side, the blue beam slicing through a cooling pipe instead of Kale's chest. "Run!" I managed to choke out, the effort feeling like I was swallowing glass. "Kale, the airlock, blow the ship." Kale didn't run. He was a scrapper to the end. He grabbed a heavy wrench and swung. The metal connected with my temple and the world went black. I woke up strapped to the pilot's chair. Kale had used every bit of magnetic cabling we had to tie me down. My head was throbbing, and I could taste copper. "I'm sorry, Julian," Kale said. He was sitting at the NAV console, his hands shaking. I'm docking us at the quarantine station in 10 minutes. They'll fix you. They have to. I looked at the monitor. The station was a massive, sterile ring of white light against the black. It looked like safety. It looked like a cure. But then I felt it. A vibration in the floor of the ship. It wasn't the engines. Kale, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Look at the sensors. Not the bioscanners. The gravity wells. Kale frowned, tapping the screen. His face went from pale to translucent white. That can't be right. There's a massive mass signature following our warp trail. It's huge. I looked out the viewport. The forgotten colony hadn't collapsed into the planet. It had become the planet. Aegis 7 was no longer a sphere of rock. It was a shifting, pulsating mass of white tendrils, millions of miles long, reaching out through the void like a cosmic jellyfish. It had followed the SOS, the signal I was still broadcasting from my bone marrow. It wasn't coming for me. It was coming for the quarantine station. It was coming for the thousands of people living on that ring. We're the bait, I whispered. Kale, we're the lure. The tendrils of Aegis 7 hit the station's outer shields. The white light of the ring flickered and died. On the comms, I didn't hear screams. I heard a sudden, absolute silence. Then the clicking started. 1,000 voices, all in sync. The many are hungry. The one is full. Kale turned to me, his eyes wide with a realization that was worse than death. It's not an infection, Julian. It's a broadcast, and we just gave it a megaphone. The magnetic cables holding me began to fray, not because of my strength, but because the metal was being eaten away by a fine, white dust falling from the ceiling vents. I looked at Kale. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. I wanted to tell him to jump. But the golden wheat field was back, and this time, the sun was so bright I couldn't see anything else. It's beautiful, isn't it? I asked. Kale backed away, reaching for the airlock lever. Julian, please. There is no Julian. I smiled, and as my teeth began to sharpen, I felt the glorious, terrifying peace of the many. The Talon docked with the dead station. The airlock hissed open, but it wasn't air that rushed in. It was the future. As the mycelium consumed the quarantine station, the perspective shifts. The rusted Talon drifts away, empty. Back on the safe sector hub, a technician receives a new transmission. It's the Aegis 7 signal, but it's evolved. It's no longer Morse code. It's a high-definition video feed. The technician clicks on it. He sees Julian Vane. Julian looks healthy. He looks happy. He's standing in a beautiful, sun-drenched field. We found it, Julian says into the camera, his eyes sparkling with a strange, silvery light. The cure for everything. Loneliness, fear, death. It's all gone. We're sending the coordinates now. Please, send everyone. We have plenty of room. The technician smiles. He's been so tired lately. The war, the taxes, the cold of the station. This looks perfect. He hits broadcast all. Across the sector, on 10,000 ships and 100 colonies, the screen flickers to life. Julian Vane smiles at them all. And in the background, just for a second, the camera slips. The golden wheat field is gone. There is only a vast, dark chamber of meat and bone. And Kale is there, his nervous system pulled out like a vine, his mouth frozen in a silent, eternal O. The technician doesn't notice. He's already packing his bags. The forgotten colony wasn't Aegis 7. The forgotten colony was humanity. And now, finally, the mycelium has remembered where we live.